pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Such an important oath. Okay, so I outlined some notes. Mitch sent me a question on this earlier. He wanted to know if this was locked in concrete. It is not. I only jotted this down so that we could discuss these items and the reasons and the rationale for gathering this more defined information. I don't remember what day it was that I sent it out 3 or 4 days ago, having to do with a software modification. Did everybody get that?
I probably got it. I haven't gone through any emails over the past weekend.
Did you get it, Joe? Uh-oh.
I may have missed that.
You're talking about the part-time, full-time.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
COLA.
got- Yeah.
The reason why I plugged that in there and attached to your 2 sheets of paper there is a narrative summary of how to go about making the adjustment. And I felt it would be easier that way, since some of you have already put numbers in there and you probably didn't want to screw with those numbers. It'd be easier to change the formula within the software. But the rationale was, you know, when we attended that meeting last Tuesday, was it last Tuesday? My time's just flying. The state,
It was last week.
yeah, they touched
Tuesday,
off,
Tuesday?
yeah, almost a week ago.
Yeah, it was Tuesday.
Touched off intense questioning or querying about what the rates were, and I know we went round and round, and then I guess the presenter presented us some rates that were wonky, and she, you know, Debbie brought that out to her attention, and she said, "Oh, apologize for it," but the numbers, I guess, were still wrong. But when I went back into the state website and I looked at what they had projected, what I found was that New Hampshire retirement is not just one rate for the year, it's split across the year. The first 6 months is one rate and the last 6 months is another rate.
Yeah, because they were on a different,
Calendar
financial
versus fiscal year, yes. So, not to worry, because I don't, and first of all, I'll let you guys check my numbers and my math whenever we get it together, but it's just a real, if we can ferret out the individual full-time versus the part-time people, it's a real simple matter just to plug in an algorithm to multiply for the first 6 months and the second rate for the second 6 months, sum it together, and boom, voila, you've got a retirement rate. Yes, Debbie.
so when we're doing our budgets, so this would only apply to like me and Peter and Mike. So you need each person listed out as opposed to a total figure.
So
Cause
what I,
normally we just do labor.
Now, you threw me when you said there were only 3
Salaries.
people involved. You, Mike.
I never said there were 3 people, 3
Oh.
departments.
Oh, departments. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which departments?
What that does.
I replied to that email and said how many each department had.
Yes, you said
It's DPW, town office,
you
and
did.
police.
you
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that serves as a counter check to what you're getting from the departments. And by that, I don't remember how many was, just take police as an example, I don't remember what the number was, but just for argument's sake, let's say it's 3 full-time policemen that are getting enrolling for the New Hampshire retirement. I guess some have the option not to take it, but those that have it available to, I'm sure they probably take it. So what we do is, if 3 was the number, then what you do is when you identify the employees inside there, and please don't put names in your,
Oh,
spreadsheet. Right,
okay,
right,
so that's just like for your eyes only, you have
Yes.
the employees broken
Yes.
down, but the main budget line for salaries is gonna be one
yes,
number.
there won't be, whenever we do the roll-up, you won't see names or
Right.
anything.
Okay,
It'll just be one big number.
okay,
However, if we're queried about how we got to those numbers, we can get to the detail.
gotcha,
Okay, so,
what I did for the police department, I put the spreadsheet together and I said, chief, employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, admin
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
bingo,
I put the name in there because, so that he would know, be able to track it. But then I had to, when I put the data into the master spreadsheet, it only said employee 1, it didn't say
gotcha,
the name, so.
Okay.
So we don't need
Yeah.
to know the actual names, but
right,
if we come back and say who makes, $52,000,
yeah,
then we can find that out easily by going through, back to you guys.
yeah, my concern, and this applies to everybody, because we have to identify the lines of the people, I'm really horrified to think that if one of these files got outside of our purview, then we could be in big trouble with other employees if they should see that and they see name, salary, that's not a
Yeah.
good,
Well,
that's
the
not,
name salary, it's on the town report anyways later on, wouldn't it be? Each officer's salary would show up in the town
I
report?
think it's just a total,
Is
yeah,
it?
yeah,
yeah. Well, that's all I've seen is the total, it's a roll up and there's no names,
Oh, okay,
it's just a big chunk of change sitting out there.
alright,
But for the purposes of our calculations that we have to do
yeah,
later on, whether it's for Medicare, New Hampshire
yes,
retirement,
yeah, exactly,
FICA,
yeah,
we have to know what the status are of those positions are so that we can calculate for it. So that thought occurred to me when we were talking about the retirement. I said, oh God, I know that some of the departments break out separate lines, part-time, full-time, but that may not apply across the board on all of them. So just to be sure, instead of using, there's the 3 codes that we had initially for inflation. It was NA, inflation, or COLA. And now it would drop down to say NA, inflation, COLA FT, or COLA PT, which is full-time or part-time.
and just to throw that a little more of a monkey wrench into your
Oh,
calculations.
goody. Oh, goody.
January, February, and March, everyone gets paid what they were paid in the previous year. We don't give the COLA increase until April 1st to March 31st.
Okay,
So that's a whole nother.
that's not a problem.
We
Well,
used to do it in a calendar year because that's how our budget was, even though we vote on the budget and then it was a whole big thing of having to do retroactive pay from January
Yeah.
to April or whenever
Yeah.
we got around to it.
so,
So
What-
they decided to just, if the budget passes, everyone gets their COLA or whatever on April 1st.
okay, let me make some notes on that, and I know Joe's scribbling too, but that would be, in essence, it
I
would
thought it
be
came into effect at the end
9
of
months
April.
of
It's actually
COLA,
May 1st then, it comes in effect,
April
right?
1st.
It's April 1st,
Mhm.
okay.
so it'd be 9 months of COLA instead of 12, right?
No, so
Or-
they still get paid from April 1st to March 31st. That rate,
it rolls into the next year.
it rolls into the next year,
Yeah, but the budget only goes to December,
correct?
so that's the
Oh,
reason why I'm
right.
saying 9
Yeah.
months.
Oh,
3
yeah.
months, 3 months of it would be from the prior
20
year,
Yeah, so
rate.
3 months would be 22 salary, 9 months would be 23 salary,
okay.
yes,
I'm wondering, do the departments know that? They do,
yes.
I
okay,
told them that.
okay.
Now, did they calculate it that way? I don't know, cause that's a lot of math.
So that's April to December. And your point about it going to, March of next year, that would go into the first 3 months,
2024,
January, February,
right.
March would go into the 2024 budget,
Correct.
okay?
Yeah, just for, yeah,
That's just for COLA. Got it,
right.
okay. So,
And New Hampshire, which will affect also New Hampshire retirement and all that too.
So,
So,
well, I'm glad you're at
so
this meeting.
I almost didn't come. January, February, March, you do the, for next year, you'll do the 2022 pay rate with the first half of the year calculation on NHRS, and then April, May, and June you do with the first calculation of NHRS.
So only 3 months apply
Well, if they're only
for the
well,
retirement?
no, all 6 months apply, but there's two different rates. January through March, you're gonna have one pay rate, and so it's a percentage of your pay.
The January
Am I
through
right?
March rate is the leftover from 22. It's
Right.
the 22 rate. Then April going forward is the 23 rate.
Okay, I may have
Right.
misread that, what I was reading.
No, you were reading correctly.
Yeah.
I'm just saying because of the pay rate, when we activate that COLA raise,
Yeah,
so January, February, and March is still at the 2022 rate for pay. So it's a lower rate that you have to base your New Hampshire retirement on.
oh, you're
Percentage.
talking about the salary rate, right?
Yeah.
Okay, alright, I'm with you now.
And then April, May, and June would still be
Yeah.
on the first half of the New Hampshire retirement rate, but it's a higher rate of pay, so it would be,
Right.
you know, if the percentage is 10% on that and 10% on that, it's gonna be a little bit more.
Mhm.
Would it be easier to change the fiscal year?
You know, I would love to be able to do that if the state could only agree.
What I'm curious,
I want the state to change their rate.
why does the state not want us to change our fiscal year?
No, I don't know if they do or not.
Oh,
I don't know if anyone's ever looked into it. I have no idea.
So is there a schedule for all of these employees and their rates for like April to March of the first 3 months of 2023? And then a schedule for the We through
What
the
do you
March
mean,
next
schedule?
time? Rate schedule, whatever their
The
base
wage.
salary rate.
So we want to look into doing like a wage scale, that type of thing. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
But no, so this year, no one's getting or 2023, no one's getting a merit raise. We're only gonna do that 2.5% COLA raise. So whatever you have in January through March, you get 2.5% more from April to December.
is it a 2.5% COLA raise for public consumption? Cause that's the first time I've heard a number.
me too.
No,
And
you're the one who told me, I think, isn't it? No?
No,
Well,
I
so
never
that's what
presumed.
I guess that's what the selectmen were throwing around for the COLA raise, is
Should we put that in the
2.5%.
minutes?
I did ask-
I thought we talked about that last week because I said other towns have done, they're doing 8%, 6%, the lowest one was 4%, and you said, what's in our rules? Don't compare us to other towns.
Right, I remember saying
That was last, yeah.
but I didn't know that was a definite, but okay.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's definite, I'm assuming.
Last I heard, we were gonna put a variable in our system to be able to, so the selectmen can come back and say, here's the rate we're gonna use.
Okay,
And I think
Alright.
Sean had used examples of what it might be, but I
Okay.
think it was just,
okay, so
Small
I
conversation.
cannot confirm nor deny the 2.5%. That
so
was just the only number I heard, so,
I did the math to take the salary from January 1st. I went 4 months without COLA and then 8 months with COLA to come up with an average salary for the year for budgeting purposes. So I can change that, and then I took that number, the budgeting purposes one, I multiplied it by the New Hampshire retirement system rates. So what I'll do is first I'll change my math for the 3 months instead of 4 months prior to COLA. And I'll write an example using real numbers in the minutes to say, here's how we calculate what each of these is gonna be throughout. Cause it's pretty simple math, but I'll put it together so you can see where it comes from.
It's simple when you understand the algorithm.
Yeah,
If that's
I've
not
got-
understood.
I've got the algorithm in my head now, so I think I'm
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And maybe I'm missing something, but the salary rate for the first 3 months should not be any different than the salary rate
Well,
proposed.
Well,
3 months, right?
we did discuss that several weeks ago, and that is the salary rates for the town of New Ipswich are set starting April to March. And since we're covering 3 months, the tail 3 months of the current salary rate, that would be January, February, March, and then April goes beyond that, and then we're talking about the COLA that would kick in.
But aside from the COLA, the rate in April should be the same as it is in March because there are no raises, no merit increases.
No.
No, there'll be COLA adjustment though. It'll be the same
COLA
number
adjustment.
plus a variable to add for COLA.
Right, okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
So, January through March, no COLA. But April to December, yes.
Correct.
Yes, okay. Are we clear on that? Bobbing heads,
Can
okay.
I go back to something I think we've discussed a couple of times, but it came up again in another department meeting I had today. If there's a line item that the department gets reimbursed for, like the state reimburses it or the applicants themselves pay for it, then
Sorry about
we
that.
should not put the expense in the budget since there's reimbursement for it, correct?
So,
I'm sorry, I apologize, I turned that off, but I didn't hear your question, Mitch, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
the question was, if there's a line item in a department which that expense is automatically reimbursed by some external source like the state or the applicants or whatever, so it ends up being budget neutral, there is no cost. We are not to put the expense in the budget.
Thank you for bringing that up. We touched on this on the meeting that you were absent from last week. The general rule of thumb is you put in expenses for your operating fund requirements. But we just need to know that because it is an expense. Does the revenue show up on the budget? No, it won't.
Right.
However, I think what you ran into, and this is something you need to verify or qualify with your department head, is I believe that she was referring to a revolving fund, which does not.
I don't think that's what you're talking about today.
Well, today's example was I met with Dee.
Planning,
Planning. And
reimbursed
she was
postage.
referring to, a fairly large line expense for postage, but she said, and there are 2 postage line items. And this one, she said the applicants actually pay for.
Correct.
She said she would prefer the expense not show up because every time it shows up as a negative number in her budget as though she's over budget,
No.
and yet it's paid for.
But Mitch,
Should it?
but the revenue eventually, all sources of revenue, whether it's revenue coming in from the state or revenue coming in from taxes or revenue coming in from chargebacks to the
Right.
customer, it all comes back together as one number in the revenue pool of money, and then that's compared to the expenses that were showing on the budget.
The other-
So,
Is that
when I
correct?
used to do planning, we always had the reimbursed postage line in there with $1 in it. And it never went negative, and I'm wondering if it was, there's some kind of accounting thing that is making that go, I never saw it go negative.
Let me ask you this, the other example, which is very different, was Parks and Rec, where like the soccer league and
Yeah.
it's all paid for by fees that the families and so
Correct.
forth. So should we put expenses for that? No, we should not.
So that is like, so that's a revolving, like Jen was saying, it's a revolving fund.
Okay,
So when people pay their dues for whatever it is through Parks and Rec, and then any of the supplies that they're buying, if they had to buy new soccer balls or new nets or stuff for a dance, so anything that, any of the supplies that are coming out, it comes out of that revolving fund, so that kind of doesn't, it's a totally separate thing.
Yeah, I talked with her, that
Yeah.
fund doesn't go into like the town or anything, that stays
Right.
within the Parks and
It's
Rec.
only
And
Parks
like,
and Rec.
say if there's 5,000 left this year, it's still there next year.
Right.
And they can go and paint new lines or whatever
Right.
with that money.
Okay, cause
Yeah.
I noticed in the previous years, for those line items like soccer and so forth, there were never any expenses in the budget.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's the case where the expense does not get put into the budget.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And that,
But you're still gonna have like a supply line in Parks and Rec because they need
Right.
just like copy
Yeah.
paper and like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff that's not reimbursed for a specific purpose.
We
Like
have that.
in each Parks and Rec thing has their own line in that revolving fund. Soccer has their own, basketball has their own, softball has their own. So it has to get charged to, it has to go into the right one and out of the right one.
right.
Yes.
So what's the lesson learned there? And I'm glad you ran into that because I got a little worried when I first started looking into it, but the lesson learned for all of us is that if somebody pushes back on putting expenses in there, the next question you should ask them is this for the general or the operating fund, or is it another fund such as the revolving fund? And as we went to the classes, we had gobs of other funds that are hanging out there. So we need to be very careful and definitive with them to let them know we're only dealing with the operating fund. And I think hopefully that answers your question, Mitch.
That does, thank you.
I am gonna look into that reimbursed postage thing because I don't think it ever, I don't remember it ever going negative, cause it shouldn't. So I don't know if the checks that are coming in aren't being posted against the money that we're charging in the postage meter or what, so I'll look into that for you.
Thank you.
But from an accounting standpoint, and I do have a little bit of experience there, just like you have a multitude of expenses that go out for different various reasons, you also have a multitude of different revenue sources that come in. Could be, what is the fees that you pay for retitling your car, or fees that you pay for registering, or fees that you pay for whatever. There's multiple sources of revenues, but at the end of the day, you have to balance all of the expenses with all of the revenues, and that's how they come up with the numbers. If you start playing with, well, we'll just take the expenses out, then you know, depending on the size of the amount, you could really wreak havoc on developing the budget, and it really would be imprecise. Okay. So, Luke, you didn't mess with this because you don't have the software, right?
I do have the software.
You
now,
do
yeah.
have the software.
Yeah.
Did you try with this to see if you could update it?
I'll have to
Just
read.
play with it.
I'll have to play with it. I've been learning it
Yeah.
the past
kinda
2
fun.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Or not learning it. I'm trying to learn it.
Sure.
You know.
Well, give me a call,
Yeah.
or Joe, or Mitch, or
Yeah.
whomever you feel
Yeah.
comfortable with.
I did ask Dennis if he'd give us a little demo.
Yeah, I'll do that at
Oh,
the end
okay.
of it. I'll do
Yeah.
that at the end of the
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
But basically, all it does is it changes the drop down where it currently reads NA, inflation, and COLA.
Yeah.
It now would read, once it's done, once it's updated.
There'd be 2 different COLA lines.
Right.
Okay,
There'd be
yeah.
4 total drop downs.
Yeah,
It'd
yeah.
be NA, inflation, COLA PT, COLA FT.
Yeah.
PT and FT is part-time, full-time. And that way we can do a better job in isolating the retirement accounts and calculating for it. Okay. All right. Next thing, I put some I see the leaves
Holy cow.
dancing, yeah. I hope I put my windows out, okay. Mitch asked a question, are these, I'm assuming it pertained to these lists here, was this locked in concrete? No, it's not. I wanted to put this out on the table for us to discuss how we're going to handle some of these issues as we enter data into the database. The first of which was employee salaries and stipends. And Joe and I had a discussion about this, and I think we're in agreement on this, that the only way that we can actually do all the calculations and the math and everything involved with not only Medicare and FICA, but certainly the New Hampshire retirement, we have to have a breakout of those persons that are full-time or part-time, and hence that's the reason why I did this little doohickey here. So I think Joe, you might want to mention how you broke out the employees. I think you discussed that with me, if you want to bring that up.
So I created a pretty simple spreadsheet for the employees, and it had just chief, employee 1, admin 1, 2, 3. I put their name in there because, well, you'll find out in a minute. So I put their name in there. I put their salary effective the end of this calendar year, so the current salary, what they're being paid right now, and then I selected whether they were full-time, part-time. I selected whether they had insurance or not. Health insurance was one, dental insurance was another, and then based on that information, I can tell whether they are eligible for, whether they have to contribute to FICA, Medicare, whether they have, what their insurance is going to be, whether it's a single person, multiple person, or family plan, and I did that for each employee, and then so I created the form, I mocked it up with fake data, and I gave it to the chief, and I said, okay, if you can fill out this stuff, then the whole salary stuff, all insurance, everything gets covered by that one input field. And then once that data populated, I took the master spreadsheet and I just moved the data right into it to say, okay, here's where that data is for all of these here. It was a pretty quick process. Ultimately, the master spreadsheet will have to update manually, so we're not going to use feeds to get into that.
Right.
But
I was aware of that.
But I have a whole form that I can say, okay, here is the whole police department form right here in that Excel spreadsheet, and we can copy and paste it right into that, into the master.
The manual process is simply a cut and paste. You just, once you get the lines of detail that you want, you just copy those lines, plug them in.
Yeah.
But you'd have to do that pretty much for each department. The one thing that I would be very, and I mentioned this already, is if you want to leave the names inside there, okay, but make sure it stays under your control, because I really don't want that to get out where people see, okay, John, David, Bill, Mary, whatever, they're making these salaries, and then all of a sudden you get people that are upset.
Yeah, and at first I didn't want the names all in there, except when the chief goes through it to populate to find out who has, what kind of health coverage they have, it could be so much easier to have him to have the names. It turns out I only have like 3 names, and I think 2 of them already left the police department. So, the only one I know is the chief right now.
So you mentioned something about insurance. How did that go into the calculus?
So there's an account for insurance.
You're talking about a specific account line, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So there's an account line for health insurance, and health insurance is calculated by whether it's a single person, whether they're eligible, whether they want it or not, yes or no. Single person, 2-family plan, 2-person plan, or a family plan, and there's 3 different rates. And
Well, I didn't anticipate that. Is that going to be difficult?
So when you want to calculate the health insurance line, you'll have to know that. Yeah,
Okay.
you'll have to know what the employee selected.
Yeah.
Now,
So I have a spreadsheet that I created that has all the police, DPW, town office, and it they have dental, if they have vision, and just like the total rate, not the town portion versus the employee portion.
Yeah,
So, I mean, if your spreadsheet will do, this is the total, how much is the town portion, it's 85%.
yep, I took out 15% for the employee, but yeah,
So, I can send you that spreadsheet.
that would be great.
Okay, yeah,
Maybe next week I'll go through the example of what we have, I'll pull the names out, but
yeah,
I'll go
that
through the
might be
math,
helpful.
spend a few minutes and.
I really wasn't anticipating that, but you know, you're absolutely right, that's how the calculus is not just a, yeah,
Yeah, so I went through all of the account details in the police department and then said, which ones can I calculate without any help? You know, based on salary and anything based on salary, based on person, I've got in a single worksheet. And so those are a few of them,
okay. I look forward to that.
yeah.
Okay, let me ask you something. I apologize if I'm just not catching it.
So, what I covered here, and I guess this is the part that's up for discussion, I felt like that there were in that descriptions, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mitch,
that's okay, I was just gonna follow up with it.
I'm sorry.
When you have, let's say, employee one.
Yep.
And the salary rate, are you putting employee one in twice, showing the salary rate for January through March, and then employee one again from April through December?
So I put the employee one starting salary, I put a COLA, a variable COLA rate in there. And then I said, what is the new rate, which is salary plus the COLA increase, dollar value. And then I put a calculated, pay per year, which I thought it was 4 months of no COLA and 8 months with COLA, but I did a calculated rate, and that calculated rate is what we should budget for the year. So say it's $80,000 day today, he gets a 10% increase or a 12% increase. Say it goes up to $90,000. So as of April 1st, he's down making $90,000, and then I calculate the rate, and then say, okay, well, what you should budget for is not 90 for next year. It'll be 86,000 or something like that. Something in between.
So in your description, you broke it out as to what contributed to it the first 3 months and then the second 9 months. But on the line item itself, you just had one number for the year.
Which is
Okay,
the first 4 months and then the last 8 months,
okay.
and I'll change that.
The 9 months.
Math is easy.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. Did answer your question,
Yeah, it did.
Mitch? Okay. So some of the things that I thought we probably should discuss about putting in the description so that we were armed with as much information that we need to be able to articulate what these requirements are is not necessarily a name, but a position title. You can do it, employee 1, 2, 3, but you might want to also kind of hint what that function's doing,
Yep.
And the way to double check yourself is to have what is the rate per hour, and I guess we're talking 3 months at one time and 9 months of the remainder. So I don't know if this is totally, if there's enough room in description to cover all this stuff, but the other thing is the number of hours expected over a year, and if they're working full-time 40 hours, and I don't know what the hours, typical hours per week per employee is it 40?
So full-time is considered 32 hours, not eligible for, New Hampshire
Retirement.
retirement.
35 and over.
35 and over is, eligible for New Hampshire retirement.
Okay, 32, and that's 32 hours is full time. Now that
32 hours is I don't think we have anybody that does 32, but 32, according to the state, 32, or our handbook, I can't remember which,
okay.
32 hours is considered full-time, not eligible for retirement.
But if they're 35 or over, then
35
it's retirement.
is retirement, yeah. So, and I actually just thought of another thing to do with the police department. The admin doesn't get the same, New Hampshire retirement rate as the.
As the officers
Police
do.
and
Right,
fire.
but you're.
I thought
that's
Yeah.
there were 3 categories. There were employees, fire, and police.
Mhm.
Is that right?
And teachers, but.
Oh, and
we
teachers,
don't
but
do
we're not
teachers.
dealing with
Yeah.
teachers yet.
At
Is that
all.
right?
We're not dealing with teachers at all.
Right.
They do their own,
Right.
yeah, okay,
I've already discounted them.
right, okay,
So,
yeah,
alright. Lots of things to think about whenever you're entering those employee lines.
So I'm gonna give you a curve to think about, and maybe I might have to ask a question. The police department requires full-time coverage, and so when there's a holiday, rather than pay whoever employee falls on that schedule, double time, there's an agreement that they have that they,
yeah.
they give them a percentage of pay, almost like an increase, a temporary thing, just to compensate you for working through a holiday. Then when you work that holiday, you're making straight pay,
Right.
not time and a half, and not, pretty slick idea, pretty good system. But that's actually less expensive than paying the officers full-time, and yet goes into their pay. Twice a year they get a chunk of money that covers them. If they have to work a holiday, they're paid for it that way. I'm not sure what they do in the highway department, whether they pay time and a half, if they're out plowing on a holiday, double time on a holiday.
Time and a half.
Would
time and a
that be
half.
considered overtime?
So
And if so, isn't there an overtime line?
there's an overtime line, and there's a holiday line.
Okay,
But they don't use the holiday pay, they put it in the salary line, and there's an equation that they use to get there. It's a hell of a nice idea. So that covered holidays. They have an overtime line there, and that's basically, they take holidays out. If there's an officer that has to go, wants to take a week's vacation, for example, they cover that time off with overtime pay. So they take the vacation time that each employee has, and they turn that into overtime. They say, what is it gonna take to cover those shifts in overtime? Excuse me. So there was another calculation in there, is how to get that coverage. That probably won't affect the DPW, because they could probably go down a person here and there and not need coverage, but certainly the police, it doesn't work that way. And then there's a third item for court, how much time they spend in court, and if we need overtime to cover it in court.
they have a separate rate for court time too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Is
So,
that a separate line?
Yes.
it's a separate line, yeah,
Okay,
so,
okay.
I'll go through all the math with you next week.
Okay,
But I'm not sure if there's anything special about the DPW, how they did it. If you have to even not, well, ask the question, what do you do for holiday pay? Is it just time and a half?
yeah, so they don't work the holidays unless it's like a plowing you know what I mean, like if it's
Emergency.
a weather related,
Yeah,
but other than that, they take their holiday pay as they go.
okay, good.
so if,
All this was explained in Word, so they had he must have spent a ton of time with a calculator trying to figure it all out. So I'm hoping what I did helps them.
okay,
Whoever did it was pretty smart.
yeah, I
No
look
doubt.
forward
Came up with it, good idea,
to
good system.
seeing that in action, yeah. As long as you have a good handle on it, then
Yep.
and can explain it, then we're okay. I think 2,080 hours is if a person works 40 hours, 5 days a week is the total number of hours without going overtime, or that's inclusive of holiday hours as well. So just for your planning figures, I think 2,080 is where you hit the max. That's working straight through 12 months, each month, each week.
So there's no one in the town office that does 40,
No one.
that's paid hourly.
Okay.
But DPW and, police, they're, I think they're all,
So one of the concerns that I had, and it doesn't concern us immediately, but whenever we get into say like the deliberation, or maybe the selectmen have a question and they wanna know how did we get to those numbers? And if we could come out and say, okay, we're calculating this employee at 1,900 hours over the year at a certain rate, then that's very defendable. But if
Right.
we don't have that kind of baseline to be able to explain that, then we're kind of flapping around. So I felt like adding that information in the description would be helpful. And I wanted to throw that out for discussion. Do you think that we should do that, or leave it be, or are we making it, beneficial, or are we making it too hard?
So you budget their salary at 35 hours, so that's how much money they'll make at 35 hours. We should probably just document the hourly rate, just what our assumption is gonna be. It's gonna be this amount of salary at 35 hours,
Yeah.
something
So
like
they're,
that.
yeah, so they're not, so that, like, with my salary, for instance, I mean, I could work 40 hours, I could work 60 hours. Would you just base it on 40
We
to
would,
break down an hourly rate?
so
I don't know how
Are
you
you salary?
guys wanna do, I'm salary,
the overtime, if you're salaried, doesn't apply.
right, so we
Right.
don't have overtime.
Right, that's another thing we need to keep in mind. If they're on an hourly rate, it does apply. If they're salaried, it does not
Right,
apply.
so
Salary
it's,
on the
I
salary.
think the salary is just Peter, myself, and Mike.
Okay,
It'd probably be better to put up to an even number, not 35, and put it to 40. That way it's easier to maybe calculate. Or
Or maybe just say salary, just leave it out right away,
Yeah.
so salary,
Yeah.
don't even go to the hourly rate.
yeah.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
now you need to
so
drop down
instead of
box.
hourly
You
rate,
know, another one.
alright, if we take that one off, I guess then the aggregate number would speak for itself then for an annual rate, then would it not?
For
If you
salary,
So for salary, the annual rate.
Yeah.
And then
It
the
is
hourly,
what it is.
we say it's
Yeah.
this amount of money,
Yeah.
this amount of hours expected.
Okay, so,
I mean, if you wanted to break down the salary people to 40 hours, you know what I mean? And then to get an hourly rate, if that's gonna work better in your table, cause I think there's only.
But if you're
4
working over, but how many hours a week do you think you work on average? Because we don't want to say you're getting this much at 40 hours a week. Because if you're not working 40, they might think, oh, she's making this much. But if you're doing 60, because you're here at 6 p.m. with us on Mondays,
Right,
and then maybe meetings after, we wouldn't want to just tell them you work 40 because you don't.
right,
You know.
I mean, I don't even write down how many hours I work, you know what I mean, so I don't know,
Yeah.
like the town office is closed on Fridays and I come in on Fridays,
So we
but
definitely wouldn't want to say 35 if we were to put an hourly rate because
Yeah.
it'd make Debbie look like she's making a ton per hour.
yeah,
Or we could say that she's only making like $5
Six
Yeah,
hours.
I know, yeah.
and she's working for 10 hours.
Yeah. Debbie works every hour, every day.
I don't think we should tell Debbie what her hourly rate is, let's just say salary and leave it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I don't know that I'd wanna know.
for those that are salaried, it's not gonna fly.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
okay,
Yeah.
But
that makes more sense.
it may fly if you're talking about an hourly employee.
Well,
so-
it kinda has to fly for an
Yeah,
hourly
yeah.
employee,
So
cause that's what they, like for instance, Jen or Susan,
yeah,
so they're budgeted for 35 hours a week. But if they, run out of vacation and personal time or whatever and they have to take time off, we're not paying them. They know that, but you know what I mean? Or some weeks they'll, go over and work 37 or 38.
It's kind of like the
Okay.
lifeguards.
Mhm.
so,
Right, yeah,
so Subline 2 and 3, which talks hourly rate or number of expected hours over the year, doesn't apply to salary, but you know, we need to have some kind of data to be able to explain how we got to those numbers for the hourly rate employee. And then of course a brief description of what they provide. And then in the case of the stipend, there's fire, which, Mitch, you got fire, right?
Right.
Right. I kind of was stumped on, I saw one of the lines had both salary and stipend together in the same line. Did you pick up on that? Gotta ferret that out somehow.
Yeah, I was
So-
supposed to meet with Matt on Friday.
Yeah, so what they're doing now, they used to pay all the firefighters by stipend. They have changed that to,
Do you remember?
hourly.
I remember that very first when we were, yeah, I do.
So the only one I think that's getting a stipend in the fire department anymore would be the chief.
That's true.
Okay,
Cause she said that they collected data right after that meeting for a period of time and got approval to switch everybody over to salary.
Okay. It sounds to me like that is principally applicable to your department, Mitch, so just make sure it's broken out in such a way that it's explainable. Yeah. Okay, and the next one is contract expenses, and let me just talk about contracts and what I know about contracts, and it may or may not apply to your department's contracts, but you have two types of contracts that are generally let. One is a fixed price, and the other one is a delivery order. A fixed price is usually a contract that spans over a year or more, maybe a single year, maybe a multi-year, don't know, until you get in there and looking at it. But the fixed price is generally going to be an exempt price from inflation. But the delivery order is the kind of contract that you could see inflation built into it, because they may have price changes throughout that period of the contract that they've agreed to pay whatever the going rate is for that item.
can I just clarify on that?
Sure.
So the first type would be like a service, we're gonna mow all the lawns for
Typically.
$1,000.
Typically,
The second type is for, they're delivering consumables.
consumable type stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to get that in my head.
And that the reason why they have the delivery orders, because of issues like price changes over a
Right.
period of time. Most vendors will not sign a fixed price contract for, say, delivery of sand, because or whatever, because that price changes over
Right.
a period of time.
Right,
So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of those two different kinds of contracts you could run into. Ideally, you want to include a line for each contract that they've let or are letting, so that we can identify what is actually being provided. The other one is kind of nebulous, but gee, it might be real interesting to know if that contract was let via a sole source contract, or were there multiple bids that we obtained that contract. Does everybody understand the difference between those two kinds of contracts? Okay, good. Be nice if we could gather that information. Is it imperative for developing the budget? No, but it would be good background information to be able to articulate to the selectmen or to a deliberation process to say, this is the kind of contracts that we're letting, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm assuming, and I may be wrong about this, but I'm assuming that there are probably some contracts out there that are not centrally managed at the ground level. I don't know this for a fact, but I think that there probably are some out there it might be interesting to know if that is managed at the department level, or does it come up here for a review on, say, multiple bids or whatever, and maybe the selectmen are looking at that. Be nice to know if we had that information. Is it critical for developing the budget? No, but it's nice to know information. Thoughts?
Oh, well, I think we've talked about, the whole contracting piece and some, opportunities for improvement going forward in the future. So that information would be helpful, just to be able to go back and look at when we are ready to tackle that.
Okay.
When we are ready to tackle that,
Yeah.
well stated.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any pieces of this information that we would want to include, or none?
I have one question though, go ahead.
So we have a contract with a prosecutor. He's a regional prosecutor, covers a bunch of towns. So they take his price and we get roughly 40% of that. It's based on population and felony crimes committed over the past 5 years. But anyway, we take 40% of his or her cost of that. I've modeled that. I actually put the math in to get us to the 40%. But it's I don't know if there's a real contract per se, but we absorb 40% of that person's or that team's cost.
Well, if
I'll
there's
ask a few more
something in
questions.
writing that tells those that are served what the total value is, and from that we derive the percentages of our cut, there's gotta be some kind of an agreement somewhere, or
Yeah,
I would think,
I'll
some
dig
document.
more on that on Wednesday.
Now, I have a department head who has a concern that a current vendor may not be the least expensive. And so she wants to go out and just call vendors that she's aware of. Now, that's not single source, that's.
No,
so
going out for bids.
How, that's not even really a bid process. And so, how would you categorize
And that could show favoritism or something like that, which we're not supposed to do at all.
Do you wanna get into that?
I'm just,
No,
No.
we don't.
no,
We're not ready for that discussion yet.
no.
I hear you loud and clear. But that's at this point in time, because the process to try to unravel that octopus arm is going to take months.
Yep.
Which involves writing up a process. How do you do
Right.
a contracting? Is it peer reviewed? Is it, do you take the best price and forego the service issue, or service only, or a balance between, you gotta identify,
Yeah,
process.
we definitely need to write up processes for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I
We
do
kinda don't
appreciate
have any.
your comment about the risk of it, being a biased selection, although in this case, I don't think that's a factor. I think this person's really wanting to do what she can that's best economically for the department. But I'm thinking, it's kind of like the Wild West out there. Everybody's just kind of going out.
Right,
Yeah, I totally agree with your comments.
Yeah.
See.
And this is somewhere down the line, we're gonna have to tackle that
Yeah.
running back. But right now, to get our budget out on the road, I think,
yeah, we put
yeah,
that on the back burner. for
yeah,
now.
yeah,
I concur,
yeah. Okay,
not that I'm on your committee.
We can make room.
No thanks, we have enough to do.
There was room for one more in the first place,
There
I know.
was.
and
Yeah.
a female.
Oh my gosh.
You could help break up this.
Oh, look what time it is, I gotta go.
Good.
See you back.
okay, so I'll let you write up the contract description, whatever you feel most comfortable with, but just realize that the more kind of specificity you can apply to that makes it a lot easier to articulate to an uninitiated person that
Right.
is not aware of what's going on at all.
So, hey, I have this contract. Okay, how did you arrive at that?
Mhm.
Did you just call them? Was it out for bid? Whatever.
Right.
Just kind of try to find
Right.
out
How
how
we
they
got
got it.
How did you get there?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And try to keep it short, but as
It's my old company, that's
clear as you can.
Don't go there.
Okay, and the next one was just, and oh, by the way, capturing fuel. I noticed that we've got multiple fuel requirements out there, diesel and benzene, or whatever you wanna call it, gasoline, whatever.
Propane.
Might be propane too, yeah. I think propane has its separate lines, though, does it not?
I think so.
Yeah. But if you feel that it's helpful describing that description, if it's diesel or gasoline, I think typically it would go gasoline to the police and diesel to DPW and maybe diesel to the fire, I don't know, maybe, or
Mhm.
part,
Yeah.
split in fire, I don't know. But
So the new rate for the state for diesel and gasoline actually resets in November. So
okay,
like right now for diesel for the DPW we're paying like two something a
250
gallon.
or something, yeah.
That we
Yeah,
were paying
that's
all summer,
awesome,
which is
good price.
amazing.
yeah.
But I'm guessing
Are they allowed
that
to buy like huge holding tanks and fill up on it? Or?
no.
Yeah.
Well, I mean we could.
Well, I mean, not huge ones, but.
Yeah, I mean we actually discussed getting a huge tank.
Well, it would be nice to probably have a tank in town to just fill
Right.
up on once in a while. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, there were things behind that it would not be cost effective to do.
I guess the purchase of the tank and
Yeah.
service and
Yeah,
if it
plumbing
leaks and
yeah,
EPA gets them, yeah.
yep, exactly.
yeah, I guess.
Liability. What if
Someone
you know,
drives into
what if
it.
the kids who are stealing the signs decides to shoot up the propane tank out there or the diesel?
Yeah.
Yeah, they could shoot any propane tank in any yard and it's never happened.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
being
yeah, obviously,
extreme, but there
Yeah.
is still a liability for the town if you have a big, huge oil tank on your, or diesel tank in your property, so.
But inclusive of the aggregate numbers that you come up with, whether it's for diesel or whether it's for gasoline, to defend it, it would be a good idea to try to get an estimated mileage and an estimate of what they believe the gas prices are going to be. Right now they're low, but who knows what happens after the mid-year.
After November.
Yeah, it might go right through the roof again. So I don't know, but if we know what the algorithm is that was used, then we can temper that once we get some better prices on a November value for diesel, or if
Right,
can we get gasoline that
So
way
the new
too?
values come just in
November.
November.
I think they've been
Yeah.
trying to do it, but there wasn't enough space left to put the police into the state too, right?
no, so the gasoline and the diesel, I guess, are at two different places.
Yeah,
And it's not cost effective for the police to go,
Drive.
unless they're going to Jaffrey
yeah,
to go to court or something, then fill up, but it's,
Yeah,
you
it
don't wanna
wasn't cost effective for them to go to the state depot.
yeah,
Okay.
So way back in, I don't even remember, March, April, I tried to get the diesel cards to go for the fire department to go to Greenville, and somehow they have no tags, and they've been waiting for the tags. Still, I check in with her every month. Nope, we haven't gotten the tags yet. And my thought was, they're not giving out any tags because the gas is $2 a gallon. They're gonna wait until the November rate, and then they'll give out tags for cause you have to get one card, it's like a credit card with a barcode on it.
yeah.
And you have to get one for each vehicle, and then another one for each driver, and yeah,
It
so
makes
it's a
Pretty rigid
checks and
control.
balance, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
well,
So, in developing the budget, if you can get estimated number of mileage and or the rates for the diesel or the gasoline, at least we have something that we can work with to bring to a final budget. The most important of which is the estimated mileage, obviously, because that doesn't change that much. The price does, though. Well, I say it doesn't, the mileage doesn't change that much. It might, but we gotta have a number to start with.
So the police had a table of the last 3 or 4 years of had a list of vehicles, mileage, gasoline, next year mileage, gasoline for the vehicle, and then we're getting I think we bought a new vehicle last year, and we're getting a new one next year. So I think I closed out one of the vehicles, added the new vehicle to it, extrapolated out but all the math was there in a Word document, of course, but it was very, very well done.
Yeah.
So that you could go through and calculate that.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Good. All right. Oh, and the other bullet was if you can identify where they source their fuel from, whether it's over here at Mike's or at a state depot or whatever, that might be also nice to know.
Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna keep our $2 diesel fuel for very long anyway, but, okay. Any questions on fuel costs? Okay. Then the next one is supplies. I started looking at the supply lines and I made a comment in the all hands that said, I'm not gonna get excited about, accounting for pencils, reams of paper, paper clips, pens, that, we're just chasing our tail on that. But then I started looking at some of the supply lines. DPW, as an example, had like $9,000-10,000 of supplies, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, that's a pretty big chunk of change. Maybe we might want to try to get an idea of what it is that we're actually buying in supplies. Even though DPW has gravel, they have separate lines for that. I don't think that's the supplies they're talking about. But that
They have to buy like maybe winter hats and gloves, or do
I
they
don't-
have a clothing supply line? Or?
Yeah, they have uniforms.
Yeah,
supply line.
that's separate.
Hmm.
So if you run across
Yeah.
that, and I'm saying just as a benchmark, if your department is $3,000 or more, ask some questions. What is it that they're buying with it?
Yeah.
Might be very explainable, but
Yeah.
we need to have an explanation because somebody will say, well, why is this department only spending $500 and this one's $10,000?
Right.
So we need to have an answer for it.
And like even the town office, the board of selectmen budget for supplies, like when we order reams of, boxes, cases of paper, everybody uses that. It's not just for
Okay.
board of selectmen, it's
So,
for
yeah.
planning and
Yes. Conservation.
supervisors, the checklist, whoever comes in this building and uses that copier,
Okay.
that's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and there's other things that go in there that, rubber bands, paper clips, staples, like that,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
uses, so. But then each department would have their own specific, like planning and assessing, they need yellow paper to print out the property cards, so that
Yeah.
yellow paper is theirs, cause nobody else uses that.
Well, most of them are well under 3,000
Yeah,
for supplies, but I saw some that were 3,000. I saw some that were 6,000. I saw some that were as much as 9,000 or 10,000. So it's worthy of being able to explain that. Okay. Are we in agreement with that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. Any other topics that we need to discuss? Luke?
No, I'm clear.
Joe?
Nope, nothing here.
Mitch?
I'm fine.
Deb?
good.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right. So I don't know. This part is just a display. I don't know if we need to make it a public thing or not. So unless anybody has any objection, I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting and subsequently followed by a demo.